today on challenges, opportunities and perspectives for a regional development in Southeast Europe. The theme of this conference clearly is a very pertinent and important topic for an organization that deals with security and cooperation in our continent. Furthermore, I see it is a very good sign that we have started to focus on the opportunities and perspectives more than on the challenges in a region which only a little over a decade ago was agonizing in wars and terrible conflicts. If this roundtable lists a number of these challenges and concerns, that does not mean that we should lose sight of all the positive developments and achievements that we have witnessed over this past decade. I am, of course, aware that the Stability Pact for Southeast Europe and the EU perspective have been among the factors which have fueled positive developments, but I am also convinced that all this would have been impossible without the presence of the OSCE in the region. It is here that a large share of the OSCE's budget has been spent, and it has led to visible and tangible success stories. Clearly, the fact that Croatia is on the threshold of entering the EU is one of these success stories, and there are many more. As the OSCE's Parliamentary Assembly, we have accompanied these different processes since the beginning. With our partners from the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly and the European Parliament, we formed the Parliamentary Troika on the Stability Pact, which the OSCE chaired several times. Many of our past conferences and fall sessions have dealt with the pertinent issues in the region. We are on the ground in the form of field visits, participation in meetings and conferences from other organizations, election observations, and the like. Many of us are well known in the region. But also when we talk about the OSCE, and in particular about its governmental structures, we are just not talking about an anonymous organization which, from safe distance in Vienna, pours money into development projects. It is not so. For the people in the region, the OSCE is a very concrete factor on the ground, and they identify it concretely with specific names and faces. I am therefore very happy and proud to be sitting here in the midst of these personalities, namely the heads of the 7 OSCE field operations in Southeast Europe. Welcome to our Parliamentary Assembly, dear ambassadors. These fine gentlemen well, Hedy Fry, I don't know if she's here, she will gently ask why there are only men around. So this is not the fault of those sitting here. And the many women and men that work with them, these multinational teams has made a difference and are continuing to make a difference in the region. To be successful here requires a particular set of virtues, and I will gladly testify that I have witnessed these virtues in the actions of the many heads of missions in Southeast Europe I have had the privilege to work with. They need to demonstrate a huge amount of empathy, they need to be sensitive and discreet, and they need to act without patronizing those they seek to help, while at the same time they need to steadily assist in pushing the cart in the right direction. This walk along a very narrow and strenuous trail is extremely demanding, and I congratulate these and previous chairmanships on the appointments they have made and which have always been proven to be very good ones. When we organized this roundtable, it was not only because we wanted to hear from you about your good work and your plans to address remaining challenges, but also as a sign of appreciation and admiration and an attempt to visualize what we have written in so many resolutions. Thank you, gentlemen, and your staff. Let me briefly introduce you. I do that just to the list I have here, so there's no particular ranking logic in it, but I start with Ambassador Werner Almhofer from Kosovo, then Dimitros Kypreos, Serbia, Fletcher Burton, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sarunas, this I apologize, Domavicius, I apologize, Ambassador, Montenegro, Ralph Brett, Macedonia, Enrique, or former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Enrique Horsehada, Croatia, and Mr. Wolfart from Albania. Now I would like you to have sufficient time for your brief interpretations, and so I will try to keep my remarks brief. Afterwards, we will hopefully engage in a lively discussion with the participation of our members. We will be able to open the discussion of individual issues from now, and I encourage those members who want to take the floor to sign up with us starting from now here. And please state your name and delegation when you will be given the floor. Well, I will now start on my left side and give the floor to Mr. Enrique Horsehada from Croatia, the host country. Enrique, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the Speaker of the Parliament, the President of the Republic, and the President of the Government of Croatia for the very nice words they said about the work of our OSCE staff here in Croatia. And thank you, Robert, for this very good initiative to hold a roundtable among the ambassadors, heads of OSCE missions in Southeastern Europe to discuss about challenges and concerns for the region. This year, 2011, is already 15 years of the presence of the OSCE in Croatia and the close cooperation of the organization with several Croatian governments. During these 15 years, with ups and downs, we have seen the progressive building, amelioration, and strengthening of democratic institutions and the accomplishment of the benchmarks that the OSCE suggested to Croatia to overcome the legacy of the war and to build reconciliation. In 2007, the OSCE Permanent Council decided that most of the programmatic activities of the OSCE mission to Croatia could finalize since Croatia had achieved all suggested OSCE benchmarks in the fields of freedom of the media, development of political institutions, political parties, electoral campaigns, state bodies, fair elections, democratic police, civil society and NGOs and others. The mission was closed and an office opened just to follow with a monitoring of two only aspects: the allocation of houses and apartments to a specific category of refugees, the ones called former occupancy tenancy right holders, and the monitoring of the war crime trials that were taking place and will continue taking place for many years. Now, in 2011, we can only certify that democratic normality is the current characteristic of political and social life in Croatia. You only have to look around in this nice city of Dubrovnik to realize that Croatia has become a standard with the most developed of our OSCE nations. Just being anecdotic now, I would say that the wedding of the 85-year-old Duchess of Alba receives more attention by the media in Croatia than this meeting of 300 parliamentarians of the OSCE Assembly. This is very sad, but at the end is a sign of normality. And full normality after a war is what Croatia has achieved with the help of the OSCE. This year, we are about to reach the point when all the 56 nations of the OSCE could possibly agree that the OSCE mandate has been accomplished and that the organization will accordingly celebrate this success. When can an OSCE mandate be considered fully accomplished? Well, this is something not easy to be declared. Some could always say that the mandate is fulfilled, but not entirely completed because, for example, war crimes will continue lingering for probably another decade, as long as evidences for fair trials continue being gathered by the police, by the prosecutors, and we all know that this is a long-lasting and not at all an easy job. However, the OSCE will not logically continue monitoring in Croatia until the last verdict of the last of the war crime trials takes place. The OSCE will consider its mandate accomplished when a fair judicial system is in place and working. And this has been recognized already by most of the OSCE nations. A judicial system is in place in Croatia, and a dynamic civil society and judicial NGOs follow every war crimes judicial decision. Some could say that still from time to time a controversial decision by a specific judge in a specific regional court could take place. But controversial decisions by judges take place from time to time in every of our most advanced and democratic countries. What is important is that a solid judicial system is in place and that appeals solve any controversial verdict. In this sense, I have to say that the Supreme Court of Croatia has been an example during all these years, rejecting every decision that was considered unfair. I said before that there is up and downs, and you have probably seen these days in the news one of these difficult situations that may affect regional judicial cooperation between Croatia and Serbia. We wake up these days in Croatia with front pages discussing about the convenience of the government having passed for urgent discussion in the parliament of a draft law annulling the indictments for war crimes issued by Serbia from the 1995 conflict. Today, at noon, in some moments, the parliament of Croatia would vote this draft law. The parties in the Croatian parliament have very different views. The HDZ defending that these Serbian indictments are all weak and even without no serious evidence attached to them. Other parties defend that we have to let the system and the regional cooperation work without need of a new specific law. Other analysts say that all this is now due to internal electoral or political reasons both in Croatia and Serbia. The President of the Republic and the two chief state attorneys in both nations have criticized this draft law. I'm confident that the good judicial cooperation that we have been witnessing between the two prosecutors of the two nations will be resumed and that the exchange of evidences against all the war crime suspects will continue to be exchanged at the technical level as it was being done until now. Sorry, I find my paper. Yeah, up and downs, but nobody can deny that a steady progress in Croatia has been achieved to a degree that most of our 56 nations could be ready to trust the judicial system in place in Croatia and discuss if accordingly the OSCE mandate could be considered accomplished. As every year, a discussion about this possibility will take place in December in Vienna. The office in Zagreb will submit his annual technical report on 17th November. Based on that report, the participating states will initiate their annual discussion to agree if the mandate could be considered accomplished under the leadership of our chairmanship in office, Lithuania. Some nations could think that still some monitoring by the office will not harm and could be helpful for Croatia. However, many other nations, I would say the overwhelming majority, will be ready to recognize and commend Croatia for a well-done job, acknowledging that all the benchmarks can already be considered fully met, all the OSCE benchmarks, and that we have to trust the system. Based in my technical work, I personally have the conviction that this year of the 15th anniversary of the presence of the OSCE in Croatia, this December, could take place the success of a declaration of an OSCE mandate accomplished, the OSCE mandate in Croatia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Horkayada. I now give the floor to the ambassador on my right, so to Ambassador Saunas Domavicius. He is head of the mission in Montenegro. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like sincerely express gratitude for this invitation to be together with you, distinguished parliamentarians. During my staying in Montenegro is the first time when I have this possibility to meet you and to present distinguished audience about activities, about what we are thinking, about implementation of the mandate. I would like to say that our mission in Montenegro in 2006, after the restoration of independence of Montenegro, we were the first international organization that arrived to Montenegro. And during these years, one of the smallest missions in the Balkans, I am convinced that we really implemented a lot of important projects together with the government of Montenegro, with NGOs, civil society of Montenegro. And now, as you know, also, it's not contradiction. It is really benefit that Montenegro also now are waiting, the society in Montenegro, they're waiting 12th of October, decisions in the Brussels, or they will be invited to start negotiations with European Union. A lot of positive signals, a lot of positive actions was done in Montenegro. And I would like to say that the Parliament of Montenegro, the government of Montenegro, during these last 8-9 months, they really, with assistance, of course, with the international community and OSCE of the mission, adjusted the election law. They also now started this discussions regarding to amendments to the Constitution. You know how it's not easy to find consensus in the country. But consensus exists. And one of the main things that achievements of the international community also, this is stability in Montenegro, good relationship with the neighbors. This is, and also multi-ethnic culture in this country exists. I think it is really huge developments in the country. I would like to say that about our mandate, our mission, we are working in 5 directions: rule of law, democratization, freedom of media, police reform, and political military. All these dimensions for the Montenegro are crucial. No, thank you indeed. I would like, how to say, to inform you about our activities and also about the problems or the issues that still remaining in Montenegro and this country. They need this continuation of also international activities in the country. I mentioned that really the house of the law was built in Montenegro. What is now, it's necessary. Effective implementation of the law. This is, I think, the role of the OSCE mission in Montenegro. It should be crucial because we are working a lot and we are adjusting a lot of our activities with the government. Extremely important direction of our activities is supporting the capabilities of institutions. Especially recently, I visited a lot of municipalities in the north of Montenegro. And I feel, I saw that it's really this municipality philosophy in the country needs additional efforts, additional actions from the international community. Regarding organized crime and corruption, I would like to say that it's one of the extremely, of course, not only it's regional issue, not only for Montenegro, and Montenegro have done a lot, but still remaining issue. And now we are adjusting our steps with the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, and we have proposed regional conference next year for special investigations team for Western Balkans, regional witness protection conference. That is extremely, should be important for the region. And another issue, I think it's so important in investigating corruptions and organized crimes, it's regional cooperation, the experts of the region. You know that organized crime, corruption, they have now new forms, extremely dangerous, like cyber crimes. How it's difficult to investigate corruption crimes. They need experts from Slovenia, from West Balkan, from Southeast Europe, and that it should be also another topic for discussion. And I would like to raise another issue. I think that it's extremely important. Extremely important, of course, investigation to bring the justice, but how to prevent corruption, how to prevent organized crime. And I think one of the important thing in this region is how to enforce, to implement the working of the civil and administrative law. I am thinking now it should be very effective. Land cadastre, declaration of the incomes, very transparent permission for construction and to open the business in the country, and also declaration of the incomes. These things, this packet should be implemented, and now our mission, we are working, we are assessing the situation in Montenegro, and on the beginning of the next year, we will present for Montenegrin society, for Montenegrin authorities, what kind of actions could be done in these directions. I would like also to emphasize, because it was concerned not only mission, it was concerned also from Vienna. We issued our press releases regarding attacks on one of the newspapers, Viest. A lot of done it was in the freedom of media. We have, how to say, different TVs, different newspapers, but it was raised confirmed, and freedom of media, representative freedom of media, and our mission, we issued our press releases, and we are waiting, how to say, as soon as possible to investigate this issue. But on the other hand, what they needed, and we supported, of course, the initiative of the president of the country to bring together the newspapers, the TVs, to establish self-regulation body. They need self-regulation body. They need also union of the journalists in the country. It is also the role of our mission. Regional issue that also needs how to say, attitude, and I think at OSCE parliamentarily, is displaced person. 16,000 of refugees, displaced person, Montenegro still have in the country. I should have that the government recently this year adopted new strategy, new activities, how to resolve this issue, and I think it's really so important. But I'm very sorry, I wanted to raise you and more issues, but I hope that during this event, we will have the chance to speak about economical, ecological, police reform, and political-military issue. I think one of the successive actions, projects in Montenegro, it was Montem, it's Montenegro, the distractions of the supply ammunition in the country. Thank you very much.
Grazie ambasciatore, sono sicuro che avremo modo poi di approfondire le varie questioni nel corso del dibattito. Adesso è con grande piacere che do la parola all'ambasciatore Eugen Wolfart. Lo dico perché insieme con l'ambasciatore Adomavicius ci hanno assistito, a me e all'ambasciatore Notelle, in un viaggio che abbiamo fatto in Albania e Montenegro, e siamo venuti dal Montenegro direttamente qui a Dubrovnik, dove abbiamo visto con i nostri occhi il risultato del lavoro delle due presenze, ovvero missioni. Sono questi i comuni controlli tra le polizie di frontiera albanesi e montenegrine lungo il confine e lungo il confine che passa attraverso il lago di Scutari di Škodar. Quindi nella stessa barca, nella stessa imbarcazione vi sono poliziotti montenegrini e albanesi che controllano il confine. Su un confine che fino a 20 anni fa era un confine in cui i soldati e le polizie si guardavano attraverso i mirini dei fucili. Ambasciatore, la parola è sua, prego.
Dankeschön, mille grazie. I will continue in English. As a German diplomat, it's wonderful to be here with the OSCE head. I do that for 1 year, and I come to the values which we, my team and myself, have to represent in Albania, and it's a privilege. It's a long, it's a special, and it's a common way. I served in the area, and I would have never dreamed that my nomination comes through the foreign minister of Kazakhstan. It came last year. The prolongation came through the Lithuanian chairmanship in office. The confidence came also from the Secretariat, from a large number of participating states, and certainly from the host country. And thank you, Mr. Battelli, for your initiative in bringing us here and speak, because it's about commitments, it's about common values, and making them live. And that is really a privilege to do it. In the case of working in Tirana, together with my team of roughly 100 multinational people, 75% of them Albanians, 25% from about 15 nations throughout the participating states. This is a day-to-day job with a long vision in making the commitments, the standards live, and bring the country always more into the center of what we call there as a process of European integration. And let me just, I will try to structure my brief intervention in 3 points, visiting briefly the wide mandate we have, say some short things on the current developments in a very interesting year 2011 that saw elections and demonstrations, and also touching 2 topics which are on the agenda. Now, to the mandate. It is wide. It was renewed in 2003. We work as a mission since 1997 in Albania on the invitation of the host government, and without the support from that government and the opposition, which have changed over times and might change in the future as well, that work would not be possible. It is to promote democratization, the rule of law, human rights, consolidate democratic institutions in conformity, and there are OSCE principles, standards, and commitments. The presence, as my mission is called, should focus, and that's in the mandate, on legislative and judicial reform, including property reform, regional administrative reform, electoral reform, parliamentary capacity building, anti-trafficking and anti-corruption. Then we have to work on independent media and code of conduct of the media, promotion of good governance and strengthening of civil society, and also do work with police, assistance work, training work. And the form in which we do it, that's mainly in the headquarters which we have in Tirana, and with 4 field stations, which we call, in the case of the presence in Albania, project offices. Amongst those, or apart, we also help on special invitation of the government of Albania in disarmament. To deal with the large amounts of ammunition still present from former times before democracy started some 20 years ago in the Republic of Albania. At this stage, I would like to come back to you, Mr. Battelli. You introduced, it's not our fault that we are all men here on the podium. I'm proud to say that my observation as OSCE ambassador in Albania is that the delegation from Albania present here in the room, it's members of parliament, women only, and among them former Foreign Minister Ata Dade. So this is the women, and I'm sure that's not limited to Albania, can be and are strong, and I'm very happy that they are here. Now, this year has seen quite some lively developments. There was a crisis building up. There were violent demonstrations in the boulevard, which is the main road marking the downtown of Tirana, and it has also a traditional meaning when it comes to progress towards democracy. So in these boulevards this year saw also a violent demonstration with 4 deaths and a really upbeat situation that made common intervention necessary. The OSCE presence was part of it, and but it was not a one organization show, to be truthful. We worked there very successfully on the ground with support from very important participating states throughout the OSCE participants, to name in this context the European Union, and especially also the United States. And our common action, talks, shuttle diplomacy, private talks, public intervention, probably really made a difference in bringing the camps on both political sides back together. Shortly afterwards, there were local elections. You might have noticed throughout the year that we had a ODIHR election observation mission present observing local elections, which is certainly at least a little bit unusual, but it was necessary, especially after some questions were left open from 2009 elections. The process is over. The new mayors are in place, men and women, and now we are working, and that's part of our mandate also, in trying to help to bring them together, because during the past 2 years, the association was split, so that made local administration more difficult than than necessary, and this will certainly help also to bring state governance closer to the citizens. I will keep my intervention short. I could, on 2 of the issues which Mr. Battelli proposed, like development of good governance and the fight against corruption, elaborate further what the mission is doing, or on another issue, anti-trafficking. But perhaps when working on a source, let me give you a glimpse that on anti-trafficking, that at least we have one part of good news. that Albania is no longer regarded a major country of origin or transit for trafficking for purposes of sexual exploitation. It has somewhat shifted more to work exploitation and also to use children for begging to a number of countries. Let me finish at this stage with the point: we have the impression that while we are very welcome by the host country, both sides, both political camps, we feel the need that we really can help making a difference in finding a common way forward towards more integration, be it regional or be it wider, like European integration. And I'm very grateful for that, because this really is value and commitment oriented and is very satisfying work there on the ground. Thank you, Mr. Battelli.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wolfart. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Ambassador Fletcher Burton, head of the mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberto. Dobro jutro, good morning. Libertas indeed. May I be so bold as to start with reflections on the first session, the morning session, even to the point of summing up what I thought was the central theme of that morning session. As I listened to the speakers, a very impressive lineup. In OSCE, it's very important to act locally, think regionally, conceptualize globally. And that is, in some ways, the symbolic embodiment of this panel. We are the local actors, but in that larger context, the regional context, the global context, and that's our connection with you. You are part of our regional and even global context. I'm pleased that we, the local actors, can be here in your midst, and I thank you for your support. I know what parliaments do. I know the constraints you face, the power of the purse that you hold. So I thank you for allowing us a chance to describe our missions. Roberto, I liked your term. Yeah, these missions are a concrete factor on the ground. Let me try to show in concrete terms my mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then I pick up your second phrase. I hope that will illustrate the particular set of virtues that my mission in BIH embodies. Prime Minister Kosar spoke of the turning point for the Parliamentary Assembly in 1990. For the mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that moment came in 1995 with the Dayton Peace Agreement. And that is our first attribute I would like to highlight. The BIH mission goes back to the founding document of modern Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is a charter member of the Dayton constellation of institutions. In fact, OSCE is referred to on the first page, in the first article, in the first sentence of Dayton. It's there in the first sentence of Dayton, which gives it this long lineage, and if I may say, this pride of place in the constellation of other international organizations. So that's that first concrete attribute. It's a mission with a long heritage, now approaching 16 years. Second quality, and here I refer to President Josipovic. He spoke of partnership as the real key. He was saying that at the regional level. Let me pick up that term, apply it to the local level. Yeah, partnership is certainly our main quality. We insist on it. And in fact, it's easy. BIH is a member of the organization. We have a partnership not just in Vienna through the BIH delegation, but of course, most importantly, on the ground with officials at all levels and in all geographic regions of the country. Third quality, let me highlight, is our expertise. Again, going back 15 years, I'm astounded how many of my colleagues also go back 15 years. Many of them over a decade in service. That's our real weight, our intellectual, political, personnel weight right there. These colleagues who go back so long, who have developed such expertise, who have established such contacts. Number 4, not just our depth, but our breadth. OSCE in Bosnia and Herzegovina is the only mission with 14, the only international organization with 14 field offices. In other words, we bring to the table something truly unique. It's a comparative advantage, given, now I combine the two qualities, our depth and our breadth. We also have bulk. Let me call that our number 5th attribute. We're large, 500 strong. By the way, our gender balance is exactly 50-50. We also tilt towards the members of the mission. We tilt towards the nationals. 85% of my colleagues are BIH citizens. In other words, 15% international, and I thank you for your support through your secundees, through your nationals who then serve in my mission. Very important, they too bring not just the expertise, but the dimensions I spoke of earlier, local, regional, global. Very important, and I thank you. Let's see, I think I'm at number 6 now, our 6th attribute of concrete factors on the ground. And that is our strength, our strong ties with BIH officials. I'm back to the partnership theme in a way, but this time at all levels and in all regions of the country. I've been in Bosnia for 6 weeks now, so I've done a lot of my introductory calls. I would also be so bold as to sum up one of their main themes, and that is the acceptability of the BIH mission across all lines. And Bosnia is a complicated place. There are a lot of lines. Entity, ethnic, political, generational. And it pleased me beyond measure to find that acceptability, that term's almost too passive, that respect that the mission has built up, crossing the lines, building the ties, establishing those relationships across all lines and at all levels. Good, those are the practical set of virtues. Let me turn to the challenges. Let me highlight 4, and they're big, and they're looming. We're a very practical mission. That's always been the CIO, the Lithuanian philosophy. Let's be practical, let's be pragmatic. I have tried to instill that in my mission. In fact, the mission already bore that philosophy of pragmatic, practical adaptability. 4 big challenges looming. One is the reconfiguration of the international set of institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina. All of them have their own place in the Dayton constellation, but there's a new one, and that is the reinvigorated, the re-strengthened, the enhanced EU presence. That's something new. That was not necessarily foreseen by Dayton, welcomed to be sure, but we have a new dynamic. You may know Ambassador Sorensen, Peter Sorensen. He arrived about the same time I did, and he represents a new dynamic with this enhanced, this strengthened EU presence there, combining EU and EC, combining the two particular sets of virtues. Let's use that term again. That's new. I want my mission to adapt to it, to build on it, to use that dynamic as we pursue our work. Number 2, as I mentioned, Bosnia has a complicated political life, a fragmented institutional life, but that's where the OSCE can play a great role, reaching across lines, establishing contacts at all levels. But we need to do that as the Bosnian political scene changes, not in a passive way, in an active way, and an engaged way, attuned way. Number three, perhaps interesting as the session wears on, there are a lot of changes in Vienna. There's a new lineup in Vienna, new Secretary General, new head of CPC, new head of human resources, soon to be a new ambassador from BIH, soon to be, of course, a new chairman. And I see the Irish are here as well, or were, and we look forward to working with them. So that's new. This morning I looked at the front page, and I'll stop here, about the, what was it on The Guardian? It's out there in the lobby. Worst economic crisis ever. Yeah, we're realistic too about dealing with the economic crunch, the financial crunch in capitals. You know it better than I do, and thus the need to adapt as well to new budget pressures. Let me sum up, and here I really do come to the end. I'll borrow a phrase from Astana from the declaration. Many of you were perhaps there last year, first summit in almost over a decade. It speaks of the unique forum of OSCE, the crucial role that OSCE plays. I believe that profoundly. That's one reason I wanted this position, one reason I came back to Bosnia, having served there earlier, because it does have that unique quality. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ambassador Burton. Ho l'impressione che ci stiamo avvicinando lentamente a quella che era anche la nostra ambizione, che è quella di ridurre la distanza tra le parole, tra parole come sensibilità, discrezione, efficienza, consapevolezza, rispetto, no? Il significato, cioè tra queste parole e il loro vero significato poi nella realtà del lavoro quotidiano. E adesso è un grande piacere per me di dare la parola all'ambasciatore Dimitros Kypreos, che è il capo della missione in Serbia. Prego, ambasciatore.
Thank you, Roberto. Let me start by congratulating the initiators of this meeting. I think it is extremely important and encouraging to us to have the opportunity to come in front of you, the representatives of the people, and report to you on our work and activities. And let me say that it is, I think, I hope, interesting to you to know what the OSCE field operations are doing. So, regarding the Serbia mission, our mandate goes back to 2001. It is a mandate that focuses mainly on giving, on offering assistance and expertise to the government, to the authorities, but not only to the authorities, to all the segments of the Serbian society. So this is what the mission is doing. The mission is doing to offer this requested assistance and expertise to the authorities, but at the same time to keep close contacts with NGOs, with academics, with students, even with journalists, with deputies, even with individuals, in order to have a very extensive outreach possibilities. We have mainly 4 fields of action: democratization institutions, rule of law, law enforcement, and media. I will tell you, in order not to burden you with details, what are the main principal activity in every sector. So, in democratization institutions, I would put as main activity the very close cooperation with the Parliament, the cooperation of the mission with the Parliament in adapting and modernizing the law of general elections of the Parliament was decisive, but also in the field of minorities. Serbia has recently done many important steps in this field, not least of them being the direct minority elections on the 10th of June 2010. Going to the rule of law, the main event which is continuing is the modernization of the judicial system, the so-called judicial reform. There again, the participation of the mission, working together with the Council of Europe, is crucial. We monitor the events, but we have also the opportunity of close cooperation with the authorities and, in this case, the judicial councils that supervise this reform. In law enforcement, it is a field where we have already completed a number of activities, and we are adapting ourselves and organizing and proposing new kind of activities like more information of the public opinion on police activities, on Interior Ministry, planning other modern police activity like community policing, more transparency, and so on. And last but not least, the media. The interventions of the mission is constant regarding the safety of journalists or the recently adopted media strategy, which is a big background or frame law, if you want, which will constitute the basis of the further development of media in Serbia for the future. Now, we have also two regional offices. One is in Bujanovac, covering South Serbia, and the other one is in Novi Pazar, covering southwestern Serbia. The activities of these two offices are crucial and have to do quite a lot, apart from pure minority work, with conflict prevention and early warning. I would, closing, like to mention that earlier this year, in May, we had a modest celebration of the 10 years of the mission, a celebration which took place in cooperation with local NGOs. We would like, by this opportunity, to underline how close we work with local society, and this event was honored by the presence of our highest authorities in OSCE, but also highest authorities by the host country, including the president and the foreign minister who was the honor speaker in our lunch. I close saying that, as a previous speaker pointed out, our aim is to work together with the host country in partnership conditions, and we avoid giving lessons or trying to impose any messages. And this policy of the mission of partnership, I think and I hope that it is very, very well perceived and received by the host country. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ambassador Kypreos. E adesso ho il grande piacere di dare la parola all'ambasciatore Anhofer, che io conosco da molti anni e che considero un amico e che lavora purtroppo ancora in una realtà come quella del Kosovo che è, ripeto, purtroppo ancora piena di problemi. Caro Werner, hai la parola. Grazie.
Grazie Roberto, and I would of course also switch back to English. Thank the organizers for this initiative. I hope despite this lecturing in a block of almost an hour already is still somehow digestible for you and will not spoil our luncheon. Again, it's I think very important, and again joining my previous speakers, that also the representative of the parliaments would somehow get briefed what we are usually doing, because our main addressee very often is of course the Secretariat and your colleagues from the executive wing sitting in the for your countries in the permanent council. So without further ado, I'm heading the biggest OSCE mission historically so far, the biggest in personnel and also in finances. Finance is going down 25% over the last 3 to 4 years, so we are well aware of the realities that are prevailing in our domestic national coffers. Currently still administrating a budget of some 22 million. This is activities with some 608 members of the mission, 109 out of them internationals, 490 from Kosovo. This means that some 35 member states approximately are representing or helping and supporting us with secondments, and thanks to your governments and thanks to your willingness to second this very skillful personnel, it definitely adds to the flavor of a multi-ethnic presence. And I myself, being an Austrian diplomat, I have to say I enjoy working there, and I also am very grateful to first being appointed a couple of years ago and 3 times then prolonged in my mission, which maybe also represents that we were, despite the obvious difficulties that il purtroppo of Roberto was hinting at, the mission can be doing its job. The mandate goes back, as you can easily imagine, to the to the dates of the military, the end of the military conflict in 1999, and was embedded or related to this 1244, the 1244 United Nations Security Council resolution that set up an UN interim administration, and within this administration the OSCE was willing to participate in an institution building effort that should particularly focus, and this is a quotation from this mandate then, police training, organization and supervision of elections, setup of democratic political parties, working for the setting up of an assembly where such parties and such delegates should be representing the will of the people, thus also necessary the setting up and the support of the setting up of a civil society, NGO scene. Logically, such a society would need media. These endeavors should be dealt with in a spirit that should contribute, according to the letter of the mandate, to to rehabilitate the disturbed multi-ethnic fabric of the society of the pre-war or the pre-conflict period. So we are now 12 years later. Where are we now? Definitely things have been developing, that you are well aware that 3.5 years ago Kosovo institutions declared their independence, leading also to the presence of further international presence. So now you have on the theater of 11,000 square kilometers still quite an impressive number of international efforts to do some post-conflict activities. Many an international actor, however, be they mandated by the United Nations, be they working for security like KFOR, be they working for the spirits of the Council of Europe, be they representing the European Commission endeavors there, are considered to be status neutral, and of course also the OSCE mission is a part of these status neutral activities. This means that the missions as such and the presences as such are not trying to, or avoiding to give any comments on the question of the status of Kosovo. It's, so to say, up to the member states of these very organizations to comment on the status, but not the respective missions of the respective organizations would stay neutral on the query question of status. Very difficult for many people to understand, and also very difficult sometimes with interlocutors, be they pro or contra such notions. However, I think all these presences have very well understood since the very beginning of this notion that maintaining presences there at the expense of our taxpayers could of course not mean that we cannot do anything anymore. So I will just in the remaining 2 or 3 minutes try to convince you that we are trying to do something. Parliamentarians being represented here might be interesting that we can continue our work with central and local municipal institutions, mainly assemblies, but also the respective administrations. This means that we can continue our work with the strengthening such institutions and under the auspices of good governance, fostering good governance, and the independent institutions attached to the Central Assembly that would then monitor whether all these good things are really functioning, like the Ombudsperson institution, like an oversight board for the civil for the public service, like the independent media institutions that control the independence of media, like a central electoral commission that would be organizing elections. I mentioned that we have been mandated to do elections. We have been running 6 elections in Kosovo, but we were also, with the support of 56 member states, able to support the Central Electoral Commission's endeavors to run elections post-independence with an electoral team that is that we are mandated for to keep it in our mission. Currently, we're involved in a broader debate on how the electoral law can be changed, since there were, and you may have been following it in media over the last winter, there was some obvious shortfalls in the running of the last elections. However, also the repetition of certain of the elections in certain electoral units showed that there is also built-in already measures to somehow counterweigh the existing or the perceived electoral flow. So we hope to be supportive to guarantee the freedom and the fairness of votes, so that voters would get the impression that what they have been voting for is also then represented in Parliament. Second focus, logical in such an environment, a focus on human rights and communities. Again, I mentioned we are an institution building mission. We are not a donors or a humanitarian organization. This means that we are not going out with the checkbook. We are not building camps. We are not putting roof piles on houses and so on. But we would, through our monitoring and reporting, we would try to search for institutional solutions that, of course, would have to be done by the locals themselves, with the support of internationals, logically, we are so many there, with the support of international donors, but of course in this interaction of diplomatic representatives, states that would like to support such endeavors, and however, based in the institutional work on the ground. Definitely, and I'm grateful to Roberto that he put this on the agenda, the question of return is on the territory of Kosovo of particular difficulty. The Serb government still claims that they had more than 200,000 internally displaced persons coming to Serbia at the end of the conflict. A recent survey there showed that some 97,000 displaced persons from Kosovo are still categorized as people in need, which might be meaning that they are also potential returnees still in their own perception. We heard from our colleague from Montenegro there is some 15,000 people as displaced persons in Montenegro. So the overall return is definitely limited. What we would be looking there is, together with UNHCR, to foster, and other actors, to foster, so to say, also the willingness of the recipient society to get more open to vis-a-vis such things. Of course, there is issues related to security. You all know them: security, freedom of movement, question whether there is sufficient housing, again relating to international funds and so on. Then from the point of the community, question of language and so on. and a war crimes legacy that would mean are, let's say, criminals really brought to justice, and this is de facto here still an international effort. Shortly before closing, let's say, other activities relate to police training. One of these success stories is of OSCE since 1999 in Kosovo, now related rather to specialized training, like, as mentioned previously, also anti-trafficking issues, environmental crime, cybercrime, and so on. Finally, not one word without the recent events in the north. Let's say, again, we are not in the driver's seat as the operator that would give the answers, but we would try to, with our monitoring and presence all over Kosovo, so to say, as the eyes and ears of the international society, to see what communities north and south of the river think, and to grasp their feelings and whether they get harassed and so on and so forth, and to combine this to a report that would go to 56 governments and, of course, also the institutions in Kosovo and our international partners to try to keep, so to say, this diamond as much as possible relatively stable and calm, as it's, I think, the K4 logics. And a very final remark, regional cooperation has been reiterated, I think, by every speaker so far, and also by the institutional representatives of Croatia at the very beginning. Definitely also an endeavor of the OSCE. I might point your attention to the fact that organization that is very close probably to your hearts, which is the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, has extended an invitation to the representatives of the Assembly of Kosovo to certain committee meetings where topics are discussed that relate somehow to Kosovo topics, or that are also interest of the Kosovo Assembly. The visitors from the OSCE, executive visitors representing the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly over the last 2.5 years have been repeatedly asked whether there is any way of Kosovo institutions to approach also OSCE parliamentarian assembly structure. So I would like to finish with this. Again, I'm referring here to this topic to the authorities of this very parliamentary assembly, and it might be interesting to hear back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ramhofer. And now, last but not least, I give the floor to Mr. Ambassador Ralph Breth, head of the presence in Macedonia.
Thank you, Honorable Battelli. Thank you also for the friendly words at the beginning about the missions in general. I would be very grateful if whenever parliamentarians come to our host countries, they also underline the relevance of the missions, because this helps us with regard to the governments of the host countries. It strengthens our position. Our mission is, I think, still, it is the longest serving mission, and it was established as a so-called spillover mission. This name remained until 2010 because the idea was at the beginning to avoid spillover from other neighboring countries. This problem is practically not anymore, almost not existing, I would say. But we still have, of course, security, conflict prevention as the headline of our presence. Meanwhile, this security includes more these elements of good governance, rule of law. And this is also these are the challenges we see in the host country. We are working on the establishment of the rule of law and consolidation of democratic institutions. We work on the problem of reducing excessive party political influence in institutions. We work on the reduction of corruption, on the influence of corruption. We work on the integration of non-majority communities into a multicultural society. Instead of, this would be the alternative from our point of view, the negative alternative, assimilation into a mono-ethnic state. We work on the capacity building and the development of legal professional standards in many fields. Think of teachers, think of policemen, think of local councillors. We work on the process of fostering accountability and transparency for legal procedures. We work on the decentralization and the participation of citizens in the decision-making process, and also on the media pluralism. What are our tools in the host country? I have to explain the mission has because the figures of other missions were mentioned, we are 170 now. Among of those 50 internationals, 120 nationals. We have the so-called project pillars. These are the three departments. One is working on police issues, one is working on rule of law, and one is working on good governance. Our tools are the traditional ones: training, workshops, study visits. This means that members of the civil service, for example, have also the possibility to travel to other member countries to see how the things are done there. Regional conferences, regional cooperation is very important, and we also help to prepare material, training material in many fields. One very important second component of our presence is the monitoring. I learned to appreciate this monitoring, I have to say, because these monitors are in constant contact with players on the ground. These players can be mayors, local councillors, they can be police persons, they can be school teachers, school directors, and they can be NGO representatives or just people, normal people, citizens. These monitors, they appear wherever something important and something is going on that could be reason for concern, also on the local level, and our monitors also sometimes try to mediate, to bring people together. Then part of the monitoring is also the monitoring of court trials. And the third very important component is everything what has to do with the exchange with the political level. This means information exchange and bringing messages to the politicians, whatever raises concern from our point of view, and of course we try to foster the decision-making process in a positive way from our point of view. Our approach is always to compare the ice go from one side to the other, what we do on the ground and what we try to teach in our courses and what happens in reality. What happens on the political level, what happens in the courtrooms, what happens in the civil service. For the political dialogue and for the political exchange, we have a very important instrument. These are the so-called principles. This is a bi-weekly meeting of the OSCE representative, of the US ambassador, of the special representative of the European Union, and the chief of the local NATO mission. This means we meet and we exchange views on developments going on in the host country, and we try to find common ground. And when we think it is necessary, we also agree on joint messages which we then convey to the responsible persons in the host country. I do not want to go in, because I want to be brief now on concrete issues. This should be left to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Brett. Now we have exactly 45 minutes left, and we have 14 colleagues that asked for the floor. So I would kindly ask you to keep your interventions inside 3 minutes in order to have also the possibility to have some discussion and exchange of views in between. So thank you very much for understanding this need. And I am now pleased to give the floor to Mrs. Romana Djekovic from Croatia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Croatian delegation, I would like to give a really brief overview on human trafficking, which remains a huge problem of Croatia and the region. I may say that this problem is treated with special care in my country, and we have established really good legislative framework, and in order to tackle concrete problems quickly and efficiently, an operational team for combating human trafficking and mobile teams have been set up. They include both governmental bodies and non-governmental organizations as equal stakeholders which has created, I would say, an excellent partnership between state administration bodies and civil society organizations. Victims of human trafficking are mostly women and children, but the number of affected men is also growing. Speaking about trends, it is interesting to emphasize that we have seen certain changes in the last few years which show that Croatia is turning into a land of origin and a destination for victims of human trafficking. Although Croatia was considered a transient country for quite a long time. The reasons for such changes probably lie in the fact that Croatia will soon become a full member of the EU, and the proximity of the border with EU, that is with Slovenia and neighboring countries, has definitely increased Croatia's attractiveness as a potential country of destination for victims of human trafficking. Furthermore, the routes used by members of organized crime to transport victims of human trafficking have been changed, which has also contributed probably to making Croatia a country of destination for victims of human trafficking. In 2010, but also in the last couple of years, the observed trend showed that all identified victims of human trafficking in the region, except for Croatia's nationals, also included nationals from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia, which confirm the fact that Croatia is becoming a country of destination for victims of human trafficking in the region. In terms of statistics, for 2010, the number of identified women for the purpose of sexual exploitation prevailed in comparison with the previous years. I think that we have done a huge step forward regarding the rights of identified victims of human trafficking. And for example, they may be granted a temporary residence permit for up to 1 year, which may be prolonged for an additional year. Second, the criminal law stipulates that any user of services provided by victims of human trafficking who knew or should have known that such services are provided by victims of human trafficking shall be sanctioned irrespective of their cooperation with judicial or police bodies. Third, victims have the right to free health care. Fourth, victims of human trafficking are a category of social welfare beneficiaries, and consequently, of course, they have the rights that are guaranteed by the law and are funded from the state budget. There are also 2 shelters for victims of human trafficking, one for adult and one for the minors, which have been set up in Croatia. Finally, a few words about challenges ahead. Of course, our permanent obligation is to consequently implement valid legislation and to constantly improve and specialize legislation further with the aim of achieving greater efficiency, especially as regards repatriation and reintegration of victims of human trafficking. And of course, we have to continue with the public campaigns to raise public awareness about all forms of human trafficking and ways of victim exploitation. And finally, it is of great importance to continue with the active participation of all relevant institutions in regional and international initiatives related to the fight against human trafficking, as well as to further improve already established bilateral and multilateral cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Romana. And I give the floor to Mr. Chris Smith from the United States, followed by Mr. Davtyan from Armenia. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me say very briefly, is extremely grateful for the warmth and hospitality extended to us all by Prime Minister Kosar, President Josipovic, Luka Bebic, and all the delegation from Croatia. You know, let me just say briefly, it's hard to believe that just 20 years ago, Dubrovnik, like much of the Balkans, was engulfed in conflict and wanton violence. I say to my Croat friends that in September of 1991, I actually visited Vukovar and saw the devastation and the loss of life firsthand. I will never forget that experience. A few weeks later, Vukovar fell. I actually hosted the Dubrovnik mayor, Poljanic, in Washington as he tried to rally Washington, which was pretty deaf to what was going on, to Dubrovnik's defense. That said, that was then, this is now. Today, there's new hope and higher expectations as Croatia is on the threshold of emerging as an EU full-fledged member. The full normal after war, as was mentioned before, hopefully will become the new normal for all of the Balkans. Let me just also point out, and we've noted this in the U.S. with great joy, Croatia and Serbia are working to more effectively resolve the plight of hundreds of thousands of displaced persons. Croatia is showing tremendous leadership in combating corruption. And let me also point out, as the special rep on trafficking, real progress is being made in combating human trafficking. Croatia, Bosnia, and Macedonia have actually now become what we call Tier 1 countries, the highest status. Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, and Serbia have been regarded as Tier 2, which means they're making significant progress and combating trafficking. But let me just point out that while some OSCE countries have done better, like the Balkans, some have not done better in the recent year, over the past year. I'd like to ask our mission reps, the ambassadors, distinguished ambassadors, do they agree that there has been progress made or disagree with the assessment? Are you confident that it's sustainable? And Vilija from Lithuania, our good friend, head of delegation, in Belgrade offered a supplementary item that focused especially on labor trafficking. And Ambassador Forth, I should say, made mention of this in his comments. While we should never diminish our focus on sex trafficking, we need to concurrently ratchet up our efforts on labor trafficking. And her resolution talked about supply chains. On Thursday, the Foreign Affairs Committee adopted a bill that I've offered that focuses more on this issue. And I'm wondering if our ambassadors might want to briefly comment on the labor trafficking side as well.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mr. Davtyan from Armenia, and followed by Mrs. Aslamova from Azerbaijan.
Спасибо. Темой сегодняшнего обсуждения является вопрос, над которым стоит призадуматься. Действительно ли развитие цивилизации сделало более гуманной нашу планету, или оно довело до безысходной крайности бедствия и людское горе? Возникающая в последний период в различных регионах политическая напряженность, вооруженные конфликты, а также природные катастрофы порождают новые потоки беженцев и внутренне перемещенных лиц. Естественное внимание мирового сообщества к нуждам оказавшихся в этих новых очагах людей. Армения в числе тех государств, власти которых выразили свою готовность содействовать японскому народу во время неслыханного бедствия, постигшего эту страну. И тем не менее мы ожидаем, что вне внимания мирового сообщества и ОБСЕ не останутся возникшие задолго до этого проблемы, одной из которых является проблема беженцев в Армении. В результате Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта с 1988 по 1992 годы из населенных пунктов своего постоянного проживания в Азербайджане было выселено более полумиллиона армян, 360 тысяч из которых прибыли в Армению. В эти годы на долю нашей страны выпало другое бедствие – разрушительное землетрясение декабря 1988 года, вследствие которого погибло 25 тысяч человек. Около 1/3 территории Армении было полностью разрушено. 530 тысяч человек остались без крова. В результате бомбардировок приграничных районов Армении 92-94 года остались без крова еще 72 тысячи внутренне перемещенных лиц. Фактически на долю независимой Армении выпала ответственность за решение неотложенных проблем более 1 миллиона оставшихся без крова человек.
Colleague, excuse me, but these matters will be discussed tomorrow, you know. We are now talking about the Balkans.
Я завершаю свое выступление. В этом году исполняется 150-летие великого гуманиста, выдающегося норвежского полярного исследователя Фритьофа Нансена. В 1918 году Нансен, являющийся первым комиссаром Лиги наций по делам беженцев, оказал гигантские услуги и всяческое содействие армянам. Нансеновские паспорта дали тысячи армянских беженцев возможность начать новую жизнь. С другой стороны, в 2011 году исполняется 60-летие принятия Женевской конференции о беженцах и 50-летие конвенции о сокращении.
You don't allow people that would speak on the subject to do so. I'm sorry. Please conclude.
Благодарю за внимание.
Господин председатель.
Okay, yes, Mrs. Aslamova, you have the floor, but please take in account what have I just recommended to your predecessor.
Спасибо, господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги. Так как господин председатель решил, что завтра мы будем говорить об этой теме, я бы хотела остановиться конкретно на следующих вопросах. Мы сегодня говорим о беженцах и о внутреннеперемещенных лицах. Проблема довольно актуальная и отвечает вызовам современности. Среди нас сегодня не найдется страны, которая не знакома данной проблемой. Некоторые страны являются страной принимающих беженцев, некоторые страны пытаются решать вопросы внутренне перемещенных лиц. Так или иначе, всем в пространстве ОБСЕ хорошо известны данный вопрос и данная проблема. Но как же решить данную проблему? Как же не решить проблему беженцев и внутриперемещенных лиц, не решив проблему, создавшую для них? Сегодня беженцев и внутренне-перемещенных лиц не интересуют отдельные термины, отдельные конвенции, которые были приняты. Мы сегодня можем говорить о многих проблемах. Мы сегодня можем говорить, что в декларации, всеобщей декларации существуют конкретные моменты. Но каким же образом в течение всего этого периода увеличивается количество беженцев? Не пора ли задуматься над тем, какие же найти международные механизмы, международные принципы урегулирования, чтобы количество этих беженцев и внутренне перемещенных лиц уменьшилось? Я обращаюсь ко всем коллегам. Результат будет только тогда, когда мы решим и конкретно придем к конкретному выводу. Как же быть? Они есть, увеличится количество беженцев и так далее. Хорошо, мы сегодня не говорим о Нагорно-Карабахском конфликте, не говорим о грузинском конфликте, не говорим о других. Так о чем же конкретно будем говорить? И поэтому я обращаюсь ко всем коллегам. Надо найти конкретные выходы, конкретные методы, принять конкретные решения. И, естественно, в этом отношении перед парламентской ассамблеей ОБСЕ стоит большая задача. Одними выступлениями, одними разговорами мы вопрос не решим. Может быть, как-то конкретно можно подойти к вопросу. А насчет Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта и о беде азербайджанского народа мы поговорим завтра.
Excuse me, madam. Yes. This will be discussed in the context of, let's say, Southern Caucasus. Of course, ambassadors will for sure address in their replica the problem of refugees and displaced persons. Thank you. And I now give the floor to Mr. Jean-Paul Lecoq, France. Please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais aussi saluer les efforts de réconciliation manifestés par les pays de cette région et leur volonté de surmonter les séquelles du passé. Dans deux domaines particulièrement, le terrible sort des personnes disparues et le jugement de tous les responsables des crimes de guerre. La mise à jour des charniers, les systèmes d'identification par l'ADN ont permis de faire la lumière sur le sort d'un grand nombre de personnes disparues, mais près de 14 000 d'entre elles n'ont toujours pas été retrouvées. Pour éviter qu'elles ne se reproduisent, il est indispensable de faire la lumière sur toutes les exactions qui ont pu être commises. Il est nécessaire que les faits soient établis et que toutes les victimes, sans discrimination, soient reconnues pour casser le cycle de violence et établir une paix définitive. Il est aussi impératif de ne pas gêner le travail de mémoire en instrumentalisant ces affaires difficiles. La coopération avec le tribunal pénal international pour l'ex-Yougoslavie s'est nettement améliorée au fil des ans et la grande majorité des personnes mises en accusation ont déjà été remises au TPI. La France juge l'action de cette juridiction absolument essentielle dans l'établissement de la vérité historique et dans celui de l'application de la justice internationale. J'ajouterai un troisième domaine dans lequel il est absolument indispensable de travailler et d'avancer ensemble, celui du discours public sur ces années de conflits douloureux. Et je mesure combien, à travers les interventions des différents ambassadeurs, combien votre travail y participe. Car chaque pays ayant sa propre vérité et sa propre interprétation du conflit, le discours public demeure cloisonné au mieux, instrumentalisé au pire, en particulier en période électorale. Certains de nos pays, le mien au premier chef, ont été confrontés dans un passé pas si lointain à cette problématique. Comment remplacer le discours incitant à la haine, à la discrimination, par des discours invitant au rapprochement, à la réconciliation, avec un réel succès en ce qui concerne le conflit avec l'Allemagne nazie. Ce processus difficile, compliqué, est engagé et toujours en cours avec nos amis d'Algérie, mais reste porteur d'espoir. Le travail des historiens doit être soutenu. Ce travail, à défaut d'être un modèle, peut être une source d'inspiration. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mr. Guminski from Belarus, followed by Mrs. Heli Fry from Canada.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, я хотел бы поддержать выступление своих коллег Романа Ярковича из Хорватии и Кристофера Смита из Соединенных Штатов Америки и несколько их продолжить. На ежегодной сессии в городе Белграде по инициативе белорусской стороны была принята резолюция «Осуществление плана действий ООН по борьбе с торговлей людьми». Принятие глобального плана действий – это лишь первый важный шаг в борьбе с торговлей людьми. Вторым шагом является его реализация, в том числе и в регионе Юго-Восточной Европы. Мы уверены, что подключение Парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ к реализации плана действий ООН призвано стать важным шагом, направленным на полное раскрытие потенциала такого сотрудничества, взаимную поддержку усилий всех партнеров, работающих в данной области. Уже сегодня необходимо задуматься о подготовке специальных кадров, разрабатывать учебные материалы для сотрудников правоохранительных органов на тему расследования преступлений, связанных с торговлей людьми и половых преступлений, способствовать финансированию учебных занятий для сотрудников правоохранительных органов в государствах-участников ОБСЕ. Необходимо активнее развивать сотрудничество через расширение совместной проектной деятельности по тематике борьбы с торговлей людьми. Это будет способствовать более успешному проведению совместных операций по ликвидации баз торговли живым товаром, активизации сотрудничества по обмену информацией и опытом работы. Также принципиальным аспектом в борьбе с торговлей людьми остается налаживание и укрепление эффективного взаимодействия правоохранительных органов наших стран. Безусловно, торговлю людьми нельзя победить без действенных мер в социально-экономической сфере. В первую очередь это касается борьбы с бедностью, безработицей, нелегальной миграцией, коррупцией и отмыванием преступных доходов. Важно больше внимания на межпарламентском уровне уделять гендерной политике, вопросам защиты жертв стихийных бедствий и вооруженных конфликтов, о чем сегодня мы уже говорили. Мы еще раз призываем государства, участники ОБСЕ, приложить все возможные усилия для всесторонней реализации глобального плана ООН. Это позволит объединить на профессиональной основе усилия государств и потенциал международных организаций с тем, чтобы дать надлежащий отпор торговле людьми и поставить глобальный заслон на пути распространения этого постыдного явления. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mrs. Fry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to start by letting everyone know that the three winners of the Nobel Peace Prize this year were three women, two from Liberia and one from the Yemen, who actually, I wanted to refer to them because they had talked about and have done practically some of the things we're talking about today. And I just wanted to quote one of the Nobel Prize winners from Liberia, whose name is Leman Gaubi, and she said that the world can never achieve lasting peace and democracy unless women have the same opportunities as men to influence development in all areas. And I was pleased to see that some of the ambassadors reported on gender. Some of the ambassadors obviously understood how important gender is. And I know while part of the OSCE mandate is to look at gender equality, it's important to realize that this is not merely some sort of warm, fuzzy, nice thing to do. And while great strides have been made, one can see that women, these women who won the Peace Prize, moved across ethnic lines and across religious lines and across all of these lines to come together as women and to find ways of building peace. Because women tend to be the most trafficked, as you heard. Women tend to be the most displaced persons and the ones who have temporary refugee status. And so they're very vulnerable, yet women have the ability to reach across those lines and build some very strong liaisons and partnerships. So I just wanted to reflect on the fact that I hope that everyone will remember that unless women have the same opportunities as men, lasting peace and democracy will never really truly exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Fry. I now give the floor to our friend Jean-Charles Gardetto, followed by Mr. Emin Önen from Turkey. Jean-Charles, the floor is yours.
Merci Roberto, merci Monsieur le Président. Je tiens à remercier aussi nos collègues croates pour leur accueil fort sympathique. Monsieur le Président, 20 années se sont écoulées dans la région depuis la fin des conflits qui ont été marqués par des violations des droits de l'homme graves, par des crimes contre l'humanité. Le tribunal pénal pour l'ex-Yougoslavie a pu rendre justice dans un certain nombre d'affaires, mais il a vocation à disparaître. De sorte que les tribunaux de la région sont appelés à prendre le relais du travail de justice. Dans ce contexte, les dépositions des témoins sont indispensables à la manifestation de la vérité. Ils permettent aux populations de découvrir cette vérité. Ils permettent aussi l'œuvre de justice, élément essentiel pour la réconciliation des États de la région. Alors, ce point est d'une particulière actualité, la protection des témoins, à la lumière de ce qui vient de se passer en Allemagne, où on a assisté manifestement à l'assassinat d'un témoin protégé par Eulex. Et cette situation, Monsieur le Président, pose la question de la capacité d'Eulex à mener à bien sa mission de protection des témoins. J'avais pu relever dans d'autres circonstances que la mission d'Eulex souffrait de problèmes de moyens, notamment de moyens en personnel. Mais ce qui s'est passé en Allemagne pose une grave question pour l'avenir des procédures en cours dont l'Eulex est chargé. Je dois dire qu'en voyant ce qui s'est passé, les témoins qui sont aujourd'hui appelés à collaborer avec la justice dans le cadre des procédures gérées par Eulex doivent réfléchir à 2 fois avant de témoigner. On se heurte donc à un sérieux problème pour l'accomplissement de l'œuvre de justice. Alors, en ce qui concerne les pays de la région, des progrès notables ont été accomplis et beaucoup reste encore à faire. Notamment, on se trouve dans un bon nombre de circonstances devant des capacités limitées, un cadre juridique qui n'est pas adéquat, des problèmes de financement, des problèmes de personnel, des problèmes d'aménagement et parfois aussi un manque de coopération et de coordination. Je tiens à rendre hommage aux représentants de l'OSCE dans les pays de la région de l'ex-Yougoslavie pour la manière efficace dont ils suivent les procès pour crimes de guerre et la manière dont ils interviennent pour former et pour sensibiliser les autorités et les participants de la région à la protection des témoins devant les tribunaux nationaux. Ce travail est un travail essentiel et bien évidemment, il doit être encouragé dans la poursuite de ces efforts. Je salue aussi, Monsieur le Président, le travail du Programme des Nations Unies pour le développement en Croatie. Ce travail a permis de mettre en place des programmes d'assistance aux témoins dans 4 tribunaux tests et il serait fort souhaitable que ces programmes, qui constituent une référence, je dois le dire, dans la région, c'est sans doute les meilleurs programmes de protection dans la région, il est souhaitable que ces programmes puissent être étendus à tous les tribunaux qui doivent connaître des crimes de guerre et des crimes de la criminalité organisée. Il est donc plus que jamais nécessaire d'agir pour préserver l'identité des témoins protégés et donc de se donner tous les moyens pour cela. Nécessaire d'agir pour avoir les financements et les hommes nécessaires à la mise en œuvre de ces programmes de protection, nécessaire d'agir aussi pour que les autorités de supervision de ces programmes de protection des témoins soient autonomes de la police et des organes d'instruction, de manière à pouvoir agir en toute indépendance et sans conflit d'intérêts. Et nécessaire d'agir aussi pour la formation à la protection des témoins, aussi bien des juges que des procureurs, que de la police et de tous ceux qui sont au contact de ces témoins. Un point essentiel, Monsieur le Président, est qu'il faut absolument que les enquêtes et les poursuites soient exercées de manière effective quand il y a intimidation de témoins, quand il y a menace sur des personnes, sur leurs familles, sur leurs amis, et que ces témoins se trouvent mis en danger. Il est absolument inconcevable que des actes de ce type ne soient pas poursuivis. Et cela, on le trouve encore trop souvent. Donc il est aussi, dans ce contexte, essentiel de travailler sur des accords de relocalisation des témoins dans les pays étrangers pour organiser de manière efficace la protection de ces témoins hors des frontières de pays trop souvent petits où tout le monde se connaît et où leur vie est certainement menacée. Peut-être faudrait-il envisager une convention internationale pour justement mettre en place des normes communes pour protéger ces témoins. Alors, j'en termine, Monsieur le Président, en appelant toutes les parties concernées à poursuivre leurs efforts dans ce domaine qui, plus que jamais, est essentiel pour achever le processus de réconciliation dans la région. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Mr. Önen from Turkey, and then next will be Mrs. Arta Dade from Albania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think the trafficking in human beings is a very important issue that concerns every country in this meeting. Trafficking in human beings represents a grave violation of human dignity and is mostly referred as a modern-day slavery. And I shortly say THB, trafficking in human beings. Turkey is a destination country in THB due to its geographical location. Turkey is determined to display a decisive and progressive approach against THB as a state party to relevant international legal instruments. Foremost, the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. Turkey has signed the Council of Europe Convention on Action Against THP and the review of the legislation in order to harmonize with the provisions of the convention where necessary with a view to fully implement the convention is underway. The National Task Force for Combating Human Trafficking was set up in October 2002 under the chairmanship of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. National Action Plan in Fight Against Human Trafficking was developed by the National Task Force and approved by Prime Minister in March 2003. The second National Action Plan in Fight Against Human Trafficking was approved by the Prime Minister in June 2009. Overall objectives of the SNAP consist of the achievement of relevant international standards to help eradicate human trafficking in Turkey, strengthening the relevant institutions working in this field, enhancing harmonization with the EU, development of strategy for the fight against human trafficking, and implementation of sector actions plans. Turkey has established a referral mechanisms involving its law enforcement bodies, NGOs, as well as International Organization for Migration. The emergency helpline 157 has also been instrumental in the functioning of the referral system. Around 200 victims of trafficking were reported and rescued since the inception of the helpline. Over 600 victims of trafficking have stayed in the shelters for victims of trafficking in service since 2004 in Istanbul and since 2005 in Ankara. The Foundation for Women's Solidarity and the Human Resource Development Foundation remains the two NGOs that are currently running these shelters. A third shelter station service in Antalya in 2010, run by the Family Consultant Association. THP cannot be prevented by governments acting individually or through traditional forms of international cooperation. Well-designed, coordinated, and comprehensive response is required. Finally, in this context, exceeding the international instruments and implementation of them in a genuine spirit of cooperation, goodwill, and pragmatic approach rather than strict formality are essential for success in the combat of trafficking in human beings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Dade, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to concentrate on the southeastern Europe. At least this is the aim of this session, and I want to thank you for planning this session with the distinguished ambassadors. I want to extend my thanks to all the ambassadors working in our region and playing a very important role for this democratization of each country in this region. I want to know more about the situation in Kosovo, and I want to ask the distinguished ambassador in Pristina, how does he see and what is the role of OSCE in supporting the government to stabilize the northern part of Kosovo? And in parentheses, we have supported the government there and all the international representation in the country. And following also the evaluation of Rasmussen, the Secretary General of NATO, about the role of KFOR. And my second concern is about if both OSCE missions in Belgrade and in Pristina cooperate and enhance the further dialogue between the Serbian government and the Kosovo government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Dade. And now I give the floor to Mr. Guliev from Azerbaijan, followed by Mr. Libor Rouček from the European Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If you allow me, I'd like to say a few words about the war crimes and the crimes against humanity in our region. As you may know, one of the most ambitious projects of the 20th century was the project of building an integrated Europe which would be at peace with itself and its neighbors. The European Union was the end result of this project. It was a response to the terror, never-ending conflicts, and the battles between the European countries, many of which are friendly allies today. Yet, the European Community project was not without its disappointments. The most notable one were the wars and the human tragedy in Balkans in 1990s. Very few, however, would remember the war crimes committed in the Khojaly village of Azerbaijan in February of 1992, where hundreds of ethnic Azerbaijani civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, were victims of this act against humanity. The Khojaly Act has left a profound mark in the psychology of Azerbaijanis who to this day commemorate this tragic event on February 26.
My dear colleague,
As in Balkans, the legacy of war crimes and continuous conflicts, yes.
Please,
I am talking about the
I hope
about
that I
the
will
war
not
crimes.
have to repeat what I already said to
Mr. Chair, I am just
But it
trying
is a
to touch
discussion
upon
with the heads of mission in the Balkans. Please, I don't want to make any impression to you that I don't respect your problems and your will, to tackle with them and so on, but it is out of the subject.
Mr.
Sorry,
Chairman.
sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I fully understand you, but on our agenda, there is a topic that we should discuss.
I
with regard to the
understand.
war crimes.
It's human rights, so everybody of us can talk generally about human rights. But now we have the unique occasion to talk about, if possible, questions that are related to the presence of 7 ambassadors of the region here. Can you make the difference between the two things?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
it is
thank
understandable. I fully understand, and there is no reason to explain widely about the agenda. Of course, Mr. Chairman, I will just follow your recommendation. Just in finally, I'd like to say that in my country, we envision our region in the 21st century as a politically and economically integrated part of the European community, a region that is free of wars, territorial conflicts, and ethnic discrimination.
Okay.
A region in which tolerance and
Thank you.
respect for human dignity
Please.
prevail over differences in race, religion, and the way of life. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Give the floor to Mr. Rocek, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me to say a few words on behalf of the European Parliament. First of all, I would like to thank our host, the Croatian delegation, and to the Croatian Parliament for organizing this wonderful and I also hope will be quite useful event here in Dubrovnik. Let me also to congratulate Croatia on completing the negotiation talks for the accession. I think it's a great success. It's a great success for Croatia. It's a great success for the European Union. And I think it's also a success and good news for the neighbors of Croatia, for Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, and other nations and countries in Southeast Europe. Because the Croatian accession, it shows that when there is a will, when there is hard work towards the goal, that the goal, accession to the European Union, it's possible. As far as the European Parliament is concerned, we were always in favor of the enlargement. If you look at our previous resolutions, not only on Croatia, on other countries of Southeastern Europe, we were always stressing that the accession, it's a perspective for all Western Balkan countries. We will deal with Croatia starting next week in the Foreign Affairs Committee. So there will be a discussion. On 17th of November, we will vote in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and then we will vote during our first plenary session in December on the accession treaty. European Parliament, again, if you look at our resolutions, we were supporting the visa-free regime, of course, not only for Croatia, but for the other countries. Again, to make it possible, make it easier for the population to travel, to get know European Union, but also to get know each other. Because sometimes in Southeastern Europe, we are looking only towards the West, to Brussels and to West European capitals. But what is needed, and it's also one of the priorities of the European Parliament, that we work as a region, so that we stress the regional cooperation. If you look at experience of the enlargement process from 2004, so that was the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, we created very strong regional cooperation, also economic cooperation, the CEFTA, because if you want to be a member of the EU, yes, there is internal market, and your market economy has to be strong enough to withhold the competition. And
thank you very much, colleague.
Yes. And of course, through the cooperation, through the economic cooperation, we also bring more understanding on people's level and create conditions for implementation of all those aspects you were talking about this morning, that means human rights, civil rights, rule of law, democracy. So once more, thank you very much. We cooperate very closely with the European Parliament and the OSCE as far as, for instance, the election observation missions are concerned, and we are looking forward to cooperate also in the future in order to help the countries in Southeastern Europe. And of course, tomorrow we will be also talking about our eastern neighbors, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and others. So the same applies to that region. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Now I give the floor to Mr. Voridis from Greece, followed by Mrs. Pavlovska-Daneva from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Chairman. After thanking the Croatian delegation for choosing this excellent place, amazingly beautiful place to host our meeting, let me come very quickly to three very specific points, and I'd like to hear the reaction from the ambassador. The first point was a reaction to a comment made by His Excellency Ambassador Adomavicius concerning the preventive measures taken against organized crime. There, I think we have a rather simple situation. To face organized crime, we have criminal legislation, and we could check accounts relating to specific crime. But should we go as far as to impose burdens, bureaucratic burdens, actually to transactions not directly or in sometimes not even indirectly connected to organized crime, just to check if they can be excused, if they can be justified? There we create a huge burden for businesses, for banks, and we create burdens to the circulation of capital. So, because I hear something like that about controlling of income and in your original ideas, could you please specify what exactly you meant with that? I think we should be very careful in that, because we don't need any unnecessary burdens in transactions. That's one thing. The second thing is a question I'd like to ask to Ambassador Wolfart concerning the issue of land reform in Albania. As you may know, there is an exceeding importance for the southern part, for investment in the southern part of Albania, especially in the coastline, which is going to be used for tourism. It's a great place there. And the question is, how does the land reform work so far in Albania? Are you satisfied? I do hear complaints from Albanian citizens about judicial decisions and their clarity. Do we have a sufficient now way to allocate the property there? After all, the confiscation made by the communist regimes and what followed after that. So that's a second issue I'd like to raise. I don't know if I have the time to raise a third issue. Okay, I don't, so I don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, yes, it's Mrs. Anna Pavlovska-Daneva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out an issue which I think it was not mentioned quite enough in this debate, and that was the fight with the corruption, which is, as it was said by the head of mission in Montenegro. I would like to repeat him. This is not a country issue, but it is a regional issue. We have to face with not only in Macedonia, for example, but also in the countries in the whole region, even those countries from our region who are already members of European Union. Talking about the legislation dealing with anti-corruption, I'm sure that all of our countries have a really wonderful foundation, but we are still lack of implementation of this legislation in all of these countries within Balkan and even wider. So that is why I would like to propose to the head of the mission in Macedonia that maybe you can develop a new project, not only in Macedonia, but a common one, where will be involved all the experts as well as politicians from the region. And the result of that project should be how to, where in that project we can have the analysis of the best practices and the best experiences of our countries and even the countries out of our region. And the results should be how to strengthen the role of the bodies, the state bodies, which are authorized to fight with the corruption, as our Macedonian State Commission, Anti-Corruption Commission, as you know that it exists, but still.
Thank you. It's very clear. It's very clear.
Okay, just to propose that kind of project to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, yes, Robert Adderholt from the United States. Followed by Claudio D'Amico from Italy.
Thank you. First of all, let me again thank our host here in Croatia, and we're very pleased to be here in Dubrovnik for this session. Many of the heads of missions mentioned minorities, but I would like to mention the Roma in particular and the exceptional challenges they face in all countries in the region in combating discrimination and achieving social integration. Many refugees are also Roma. Roma was highlighted at the OSCE Human Dimensions meeting in Warsaw. This is a priority for the U.S. in the OSCE. Would the heads of the Albanian, Kosovo, and Macedonian and other missions wish to comment on their work with the Roma communities? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adderholt. And now we have Claudio D'Amico, Italy. Please, we then have Mrs. Gordana Poplasic from Serbia and Mario Del Vecchio, Italy again. We have some concrete questions already that have been put to the ambassadors, and we are 5 minutes out of the time of the time we would have. So please be very, very brief, and so we can hear also from the ambassadors afterwards. Thank you.
Grazie Presidente, ringrazio anch'io gli amici croati per l'organizzazione di questo meeting in questo bellissimo posto e ringrazio anche per aver organizzato questa sessione che ritengo molto importante. Vorrei iniziare a fare alcune domande, cercherò di essere molto breve. Velocissimo farò. La prima è una delle missioni dell'OSCE è quello, ritengo che sia fondamentale, quella della prevenzione dei conflitti. Quindi chiedo a voi, ambasciatori nei paesi dei Balcani, avete il sentore di aree dove possano in futuro svilupparsi i conflitti se non si attuano determinate azioni e determinate politiche? Questa è la prima. La seconda, in modo specifico all'ambasciatore a Skopje, ha parlato di una possibile alternativa, o società multietnica o assimilazione. Ecco, non capisco cosa significa assimilazione, perché io ritengo che nel FIROM ci sia una così alta percentuale sia di cristiani che di musulmani che è difficile che uno possa assimilare l'altro. Ecco, non ho capito quella sua affermazione. La terza è riguardo alle migrazioni illegali. Voi avete il sentore e sul campo potete vedere quanto le frontiere siano controllate o meno controllate, quale collaborazione ci sia tra polizie di frontiera tra i vari stati. Ecco, ritengo importante sentire da voi dove ci possono essere dei problemi, perché il contrasto alle migrazioni illegali penso che sia una delle cose fondamentali, e quindi capire dove ci sono problematiche nella gestione e nel controllo delle frontiere è importante. E per ultimo vorrei sapere da voi cosa ne pensate di quello che è stato detto anche dal rappresentante dell'Unione Europea per quanto riguarda il regime dei visti con l'Unione Europea. L'abolizione dei visti può portare migrazioni, come è successo con la Romania, di centinaia di migliaia di Rom senza poi avere la possibilità di accoglierli nei paesi dove loro arrivano?
Grazie. Scusa, ma... And now, Mrs. Gordana Poplazic from Serbia.
Uvaženi predsjedavajući, poštovane kolege narodni poslanici, izražavam zabrinutost po pitanju nadležnosti misije OEBS-a koje bi trebalo da ostanu statusno neutralne, kao što su to šefovi misija i sami tvrdili u svojim izveštajima, ali koji bi trebalo da se drže i izvornih principa OEBS-a, to je nepromenljivost granica. Iz njihovih izveštaja ja nisam mogla da zaključim da misija OEBS-a na tome i rade. Sama činjenica da OEBS ima posebnu misiju na Kosovu umjesto da prostor Kosova i Metohije pokriva misija iz Srbije, potvrđuje činjenicu da OEBS ne poštuje rezoluciju 1244. Predstavnik OEBS-a iz Prištine nije ni spomenuo nemile događaje na Jarinju, gde su predstavnici KFOR-a pucali na nenaoružan narod, tako da izveštaje naših predstavnika u svim jugoistočnim...
Thank you very much, Madam. It is very clear. We already had a question relating to this border issue. I think for the ambassadors it's very clear what they have to say to you. And now, the last speaker, it's Mauro Del Vecchio from Italy.
Grazie signor Presidente. Intanto congratulazioni alla delegazione croata per la squisita accoglienza e soprattutto congratulazioni alla Repubblica di Croazia per gli sforzi che sta svolgendo a favore di un processo democratico nei paesi dei Balcani. Apprezzo fortemente l'esposizione dei 7 ambasciatori responsabili delle missioni dell'OSCE per l'azione fattiva che si svolgono. La situazione nel sud-est europeo è fortemente migliorata anche grazie alla loro azione negli ultimi 20 anni, ma credo che si possa e si debba, l'OSCE in generale, fare ancora di più. Molti hanno ricordato, hanno parlato della tratta degli esseri umani, del perseguimento dei crimini di guerra, della lotta alla corruzione. Io vorrei sottolineare molto brevemente un altro aspetto che a mio modo di vedere è fondamentale, il problema degli sfollati e dei rifugiati. È infatti una problematica che ha coinvolto trasversalmente tutti i paesi dell'ex Jugoslavia e tuttora condiziona i rapporti tra questi paesi. Sono del parere che se non si risolve il problema degli sfollati e dei rifugiati non si può pensare di vedere una forte e reale integrazione tra i paesi dell'ex Jugoslavia.
Certo, grazie mille. Mi scuso, I have to apologize, but also interpreters are already complaining because we are out of time. So please, let's allow the ambassadors very shortly to answer the concrete questions that were raised. Thank you very much. Very short. Sorry. Mission to Skopje, yes, please.
About the human trafficking, I can confirm the impression that there is good progress, and I'm happy to say that the mission is also active in this field, and all our projects related to organized crime are also relevant in this field. Refugees, there are no big problems in the country. Gender issues are taken care of in our projects, but I think also the gender, the equal rights for the are on a good level in the host country. Yes, we take up this idea of new projects in the region regarding the corruption. I promise this here, and we take it home. About the Roma, we are very active in the political department. We have a person who is himself Roma, who is specialized in this, and we are supporting the Ministry of Labor in Roma projects. Prevention of conflicts, of course, as I said, this is the main issue, and we don't see immediate risks, but it is also the possibility that from small things, they can develop into bigger conflicts. For example, we are now monitoring very much the census, which seems very technical, but is very emotional and very political. This remark regarding multi-ethnic society versus assimilation means what we want and what we not want. Namely, I mean, what we don't want to support is, of course, assimilation. We want to foster the multi-ethnic society in the host country. So this was as brief as was possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have two alternatives. Whether we just stop or we continue in English. Now,
there's no interpretation. That means that we'll all speak in English.
It is obvious that we will not have any interpretation anymore. So we can I can understand that we can continue in English. Thank you. Ambassadors, I don't know, there are some concrete questions that have been raised to you, and it's refugees, witness protection, cooperation between missions, Kosovo, Serbia, corruption, restitution of property that has been confiscated, ULEX. Please.
Roberto, very briefly, on the refugees, on the 7th of November, there is a meeting in Belgrade of the 4 countries about this problem. It is very significant that an agreement on a political declaration by the 4 countries is already agreed, and a project for a donors conference which is expected to take place next spring. On common activities that was mentioned by a respected deputy of Albania between the missions of Belgrade and Pristina, I would like to mention that already we had a very successful one in November and spring, November last year, spring this year, on journalists investigating on organized crime that was referring to the whole region. We had 10 journalists from Pristina and 10 from Belgrade with a big success, and we continue to examine other possibilities of common cooperation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wolfert, please.
Okay, following up on my colleague from Belgrade, let's say I can confirm what he was just saying on this cooperation. There's a variety of topics, and we get also invited by both institutional sides to do more also, let's say, cooperation, say, agenda caucuses in the parliaments, maybe on the youth level and so on. This would be then, in our understanding, and I think the mission, I can speak here also for the mission in Belgrade, our understanding of supporting the EU-facilitated dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade. And since also the events in the north that I could shortly only tackle due to time restraints first, there is a clear-cut international mandate to executive offices in Kosovo, which is KFOR for the secure and stable, for guaranteeing the safe and secure environment, and this is what they are doing there. And the EULEX mission was mandated by the EU member states to do respective activities concerning to the implementation of rule of law. The OSCE mission insofar is not involved, is not body to this, and what we are trying to do, be it in the north or in the south of Kosovo, is to try to contribute to the work, of course, also of other missions, but particularly from our point of view, to work on the grassroots level with the communities there and see, and this is also, I think, a kind of answer to question of conflict prevention and so on, to see whether developments, as we have been witnessing them over the last 2 months in the north, might eventually trigger additional reactions in the social fabric and would maybe trigger reactions as we have been seeing them in Kosovo, for example, in spring 2004. We are trying to remedy this with being simply with the communities at a daily level, and thanks to the size of the mission, this is possible. For the political framework, logically, such a facilitated dialogue for Pristina and Belgrade would be the answer, and it's probably not up to the missions in Kosovo or also in Belgrade, I guess, to find the political answers. I think this is not the role of the OSCE. If I may add up on the other topics that I've found here, interesting, Roma very much taken up, logically also a problem in Kosovo, and also the other topics, big topics mentioned. This is unfortunately a time constraint issue here. We try to find and accommodate action plans and work and support institutions in tackling the issue. A very wise contribution from one parliamentarian was hinting to the fact that very often we have legislation in place. It's the question of implementation. This might not be a problem only on the Western Balkans, but definitely here very often these new experiences in government, of course, impact on the quality of delivery of services, and I see for the mission in Kosovo a role there to support the institutions to deliver services to the populations. Institutions at the end would be the structures, and this is a statute-neutral statement for Kosovo, I have to underline. Institutions would be the structures that should give the remedy to their city, to the citizens. It cannot be, so to say, a long-lasting hope that internationals will do it forever, so that there must be an institutional response that would mean inclusion in processes. This would, of course, be fair and transparent participation in distributing money in an assembly, which means also fair elections, would be meaning participation in institutions like police and so on and so forth. May I stop here? Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador Ramhofer. Ambassador Burden, yes.
Trafficking, indeed, modern-day slavery. My mission, the mission to Bosnia and Herzegovina, makes it a big priority. The problem developed in the 1990s in BIH, first transit destination, now origin. We have placed a lot of resources into combating trafficking. In fact, there's a conference ongoing right now in Sarajevo encompassing all the Supreme Court presidents and chief prosecutors from the region, all countries in the region represented there, and trafficking will be one of their focal points. The BIH authorities have their state action plan. As our Turkish parliamentarian said, we need that well-designed, comprehensive, cooperative approach. We support the BIH authorities in the pursuit of their state action plan, passed in 2008, going to 2012. Prevention, protection, prosecution, the 3 Ps, we're pursuing all 3 Ps. Can we rest on our sense of success? Now I answer the question from Congressman Smith. No, and I would end not with a P, but a V, vigilance, vigilance. We need to work on all 3 pillars of the strategy: prevention, protection, and prosecution.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think, Ambassador Adumavicius, there was a question directly to you.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for question of representative from Serbia regarding prevention of the corruption. I think that it was the main idea to prevent the corruption, to fight against corruption, not only important to implement criminal law. And I said that very clear, very transparent regulation of the issuing permissions for construction, for opening the business, declaration of the incomes, it regulates everyday life in the country. And on the other hand, it would be, how to say, support investments in the country. Because if it would be transparent climate in the country, it creates no obstacles for domestic businessmen, but also open the doors for foreign investments. And this is, I think, that it should be in this direction. We should work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to Ambassador Wolfart.
Thank you, Mr. Battelli. On conflict prevention, we had violent demonstrations in Albania earlier this year, and that was just weeks before the local elections were scheduled and then held. And that was a very important time for preventing a further building up of what could have led to a real internal conflict, not an international, but an equally important internal conflict. And it saw interventions not only from the OSCE presence proper on the ground, but from important partners. And what I would like to highlight at this stage, it involved also the chairmanship, since the roles of the capitals are at some stages very important, showing that they are behind their delegations' respective embassies. It's also equally important to have that support at the most possibly visible way through the chairmanship in office. Lithuania was acting in a very swift and extremely helpful action. Thank you to the chairmanship for that as well. And I think the Parliamentary Assembly should be made aware on how important that tool is, especially when it comes in time. To the question from the distinguished Greek delegate on the relevance of property issue, highly relevant. Last week I had the opportunity to accompany another delegation to a very important Greek investment just north of Tirana. You asked for the south, I know, but north of Tirana, it's the cement factory, 200 million greenfield investment. And the prime problem in the beginning was having clarity who owns that green field. And these were a couple of dozen people all of a sudden. It was a lengthy process, was clarified. This is also the key on how we see what's happening along the southern coast. We do one part, OSCE-led. The other part is World Bank-led. That's where it comes to urban areas. And when you ask for a degree of happiness, how satisfied we are, I can only give you twofold answers. We assist and help the Albanian authorities to make the utmost in finding a proper solution that means based on the rule of law. And that leads, which is key, important, and there we are satisfied. But at the same time, of course, that leads to a sort of lengthy process. And when it comes to time to find quick solutions, there, of course, we are not satisfied. So we are trying somehow to stay on 100% top quality while still delivering in time, but it stays lengthy. Let me be short on anti-trafficking, even though it would deserve probably more than 10 sessions. We focus very much on it. It needs constant watch. Even when I said earlier a little bit less sexual abuse, it is still an issue. Child labor I mentioned earlier, and perhaps let me jump to one important action we will have next week, for example. We will support the Albanian National Anti-Trafficking Coordinator to hold a meeting with their Kosovo-Serbian counterparts on enhancing cooperation on the issue of child begging in that direction, and the challenges of course continue. My last remark, and that's related to it, is to work with minorities. It's also a factor in the census being held right now in Albania and other censuses in the region. We work a lot with minorities and especially with Roma. When funds permit, I also give them from my head of presence fund for educational programs, but that's especially the direction on which we work with the government, education related, and we are in constant contacts and also sometimes hold workshops on it. But it's mainly an educational issue. I can say that the Albanian government and the local authorities are aware of the fact. In some regions more, in others not so much, and that's why we also need the project offices, and we identified already a series of projects there to go ahead. We are very considerate of that, and thanks for that question.
Grazie ambasciatore Wolfart. Do adesso la parola all'ambasciatore Jorge.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Since we are in this very nice host country and some comments about refugees were done, I would like to remind that Croatia is in the Balkans, one of the regions where the biggest flow of refugees going out, refugees coming in, displaced persons going from north to south and east to west in Croatia during the war took place. And then I would like just to remind and announce that 2 months ago the OSCE office in Zagreb considered the 3 last benchmarks that the OSCE has placed to Croatia in this field, in the field of what was remaining in refugees, were fully accomplished in the quantities of apartments for the kind of refugees called OTR holders. But also I would like to remind that precisely in 2007 the OSCE Council wanted to commend the work, the tremendous effort that Croatia did in the field of refugee return and reintegration, and consider this field already accomplished, except a small question of the OTRs that I announce is now finalized. With all this work of reconstruction of damaged houses, return of properties, return of agricultural land, and housing care programs, that I would like also to mention that and remind that Croatia did with their own funds, and in very special occasion they use international money. They did it with their own funds because they stated always that it was a national political priority to facilitate the return and reintegration of refugees. And concerning the conferences that are taking place among the 4 nations, and the next one is going to take place in Belgrade, as Ambassador Kypreos mentioned. Of course, Croatia will be there, and the housing care program that Croatia has organized during all these years to facilitate these questions will be studied also by other countries as an example that could be reciprocated in some countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have come to an end of our session. I thank you very much for resisting here for so long, but this is also a sign that the subjects that were presented are important, and I thank you for also appreciating the presence of the 7 ambassadors here with us. I have to thank them from my heart because they accepted, they were able to come, they were able to present their work, and they were able to show what the OSCE really is in reality. Thank you very, very much.